Now what you doing? Later on, switch on TV. They give me the news, they give half truths to me. They give us wise, they feed us lies. Now what we doing? Educate, they fabricate, and we sit back till it's too late.
The Radio Adventure. Rick Adams is on.
We're here tonight. Monday night program of Rick Adams Uncensored here on RBN. Today I taped a few television programs on local public access cable and also did some other taping on this World War II documentary concerning debunking the Holocaust. And, I read on one of the programs in opening what I'll read now. In the book of Revelation, in chapter 18, verse 3 is the following verse. I think this is very apropos, folks, to what has been happening now in the last 3 or 4 days. And that is, verse 3, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacy. Now, folks, that is one people, and that is one city. And I'll give you a guess. 3 guesses. The first 2 don't count. As to which city you think that is today in Bible prophecy. Well, shall I tell you? It is the city of Jerusalem. No doubt, no question about it. Absolutely no inkling of a contradiction of that statement. This is the city we talk about. That is the base for this worldwide control over all the economies, policies, and politics, and yes, even ultimately the religions of the world, which will be unified. But here we had an attack, allegedly, again, just the other day, as we were on the air and we could see things, being talked about. And then on Saturday or Sunday, and then tonight particularly, I watched the evening propaganda, and the first 11 minutes of it was devoted to this story about this alleged Somali terror group. Now, it's a new group, by the way, that has 20 American members prone to strike outside of Somalia, and there they go in a mall owned by Israelis, by the way, in Kenya. Well, gosh dang it, didn't we tell you? Didn't we tell you it was the Zionists that were involved in all of these nefarious plots from 9/11 here, USS Cole, a number of years before that, and of course in Bali, Madrid, and on, the London 2 bombings. Terror begets terror, and terror is signed with the mark of Jerusalem. So now they played it up to that. I don't know if any of you caught the videos. I'm sure you did. The comical, laughable videos of this terrible crime scene in this mall, which is run by Israelis, and their security, of course, along with the Kenyan government, which they control, was in the process of, killing them off and weeding them out. These new terrorists known as, I guess, Al-Shabaab. Now, when I first heard of Al-Shabaab, I had to chuckle because I thought it was some sort of a revival of a rock band from the 1950s. I mean, I really I thought it almost sounded like Shaboom. And yet, well, I had to stand corrected. No, it's yet another radical extremist Muslim group that we all should be wary about. Only now The FBI is heavily involved because the FBI says now that it has Americans involved with it. Americans. And they don't have to be Muslims either. So now, if you saw any of the videos tonight, it was amazing. I didn't see a single body bloodied or blown apart with these massive weapons they used, allegedly. No blood and guts anywhere. And we saw bullets flying in the air and people ducking between aisles as they were shopping in this upscale Jewish mall. Interesting. I saw one woman with a little bit of paint on her face tonight, a little bruise painted on, another crisis actress, and she was telling about the horrific event and how terrible it was that she was attacked and so many people have lost their lives. What was it now, 66 or something like that? Or was it 666? Nevertheless, by listening to some of the others who were giving their testimony before the cameras of Hollywood, interestingly enough, they did not look Arabic. Obviously, there's a good, reliable suggestion they are not. They are Jewish. They are Zionine. Be that as it may, the interesting part about it is the way they spoke English so well. And I was just amazed at how they can do. Now, we also heard from some of the so-called terrorists who speak English much better than you, much better than I. They are probably masters of it because they are just well-schooled Muslims. They are highly educated Muslims who are striking at the heart of America. And they're doing it there, and now they're planning something here in America, you see. So, folks, if anybody now doubts what we've been saying and showing on nodisinfo.com, that it is strictly the synagogue of Satan, which is orchestrating much of this disinfo, much of this false flag attacking on America and on Americans and on Christians, then you should be ashamed. You should be ashamed of yourself, because I don't think anybody could be that dense. Clearly, anybody, except those who lie in the media and those who play the game, should be able to figure it out. Now, we've just had the Washington, D.C. event, and that, too, is an impossibility, as we have shown. That cannot possibly happen. What they said happened, and they're still trying to figure out what it is they want us to know, because they've contradicted the official story a number of times. But nevertheless, nobody goes on a naval base or any other kind of shipyard or facility and just walks in and carries bags in without proper ID, without being thoroughly checked out, thoroughly identified. And then, if they are found to be who they say they are, they might get clearance. They might, but they don't. So, clearly, again, these things are beyond the reach. They are just totally beyond the pale as far as I'm concerned. They cannot be real. They emulate Boston, the Boston Marathon fireworks display. What we heard happened in Sandy Hook's. And once again, we're being told about domestic terror, the threat of these links to Al-Qaeda, links to radical Islam overseas, and about these patriot groups, and yet even more so, patriots with guns. Mental health issue. Disturbed veterans. Doesn't it all sound so familiar? I'll come back in 3 or 4 minutes with more of Rick Adams and discuss some more. Stay tuned.
Rick Adams is back.
Radio Avenger, the Paul Revere of talk radio.
amazing, isn't it, huh? How the world can be changed so quickly. Now, in prophecy here, we know that the target, the city of end-time prophecy here is Jerusalem, and we can see that there is a movement right now as we speak to bring about the faithful in control of that Temple Mount area, which is key to this whole thing, because Jerusalem is going to be the place where Satan appears in that temple, in a flesh body, a man, the man of sin. And he is going to come in that city only. He's going to rule from that city, okay? Because his children are basically tied right in from the seed line of Cain right down to the end of this paradigm, if you will, this biblical paradigm, where they must fulfill these events in prophecy. So now we have this Arab legislator who is permitted, one of a handful in Israel's parliament, in the Knesset, to protest. In fact, he has protested and demanded that Israel keep these Jewish militants away from the Temple Mount, where you have the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But is it falling upon deaf ears? Well, of course. Why, of course. Right now we have great instability. We have attacks on, I believe it was Joseph's tombs last week. We've had the attack on Rachel's tomb, as it is called, in that archaeological area, blaming Arabs for attacks, whether or not they had anything to do with it. And so it creates more hatred, more rivalry, more instability, and the obvious push for that temple to go up. So now we're living in a very, very, very pivotal time here with all of this happening. And with Iran, particularly, we have the new leader of Iran, the new spokesman, Rouhani, who is titularly the new president. And now he's coming here, Washington, of course, not in Washington, but New York at the UN, where he will address the body and purportedly will sit down and meet with Obama. Now, I understand politics and I understand the art of, political diplomacy. Nevertheless, pretty hard to sit down with a gang of thugs and murderers in New York or Washington or anywhere who are killing your Muslim brethren. It doesn't particularly make any sense, does it? Well, it does if you understand politics and how these Kenites work from within and without to bring about their change. So right now we're being told a lot about peace. There are peace talks in the air. And peace is something, of course, that everybody wants. Who doesn't want peace, folks? Who doesn't want the whole planet to calm down and end all of this seeming senseless violence that we're seeing everywhere, including real violence that we know is happening in our own backyards? Gangs and, gunplay and drugs and all of that. Well, everybody wants that. So when the time comes where it gets totally out of control and Johnny on the spot appears in the temple, people will be so fed up worldwide, people will be so inclined to accept that peace that most of them will do anything to attain it. And I think many will seek it openly. Others will have to join in, because in order to buy or sell or to survive in this world system, you will have to have that mark of Cain, which is the seed line of Satan's children. And that's where they are, in Jerusalem. So, it's very interesting to observe Rouhani seeking constructive engagement, as he called it, with this government in Washington, a government which has repeatedly chastised Iran, warned Iran, threatened Iran, if you will, and yet he is seeking these peace overtures. Now, I can understand the obvious proclivities to avoid war and worldwide war, not just regional war. Nevertheless, it does seem rather peculiar at this particular time. And I would suggest there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes now that we are not privy to, we're not aware of, that is taking place. And this is how Satan works. This is how his legions work. They don't work in the open. They work in the cover of darkness. Isn't that what they did with Jesus? And he said that to them. Here you come out at night to get me. I was sitting in the temple all day teaching, and you didn't lay hands on me. Why? Because your evil deeds are just that. Your deeds are evil. And you do the will of your Father. You know that the people would not allow it. The people would see you for yourselves, for what you are. And we can't allow that now, can we? So, again, they hide under the cover of darkness, and they perpetrate subtleties. You know, this beast, this serpent in Genesis, was the most subtle of all of the beasts of the field. He wasn't one of those horns and spear hissing types. No. He was absolutely charming. This beautiful creature. And yet, he was deadly, as Eve had to find out the hard way. So now the reaction that we're being shown on TV about this Rouhani is that Israel is not very happy about it. Israel is being given a good licking, we're told, and Russia is stepping up to the plate and coming to the side of reason and rationality. Are they? Is it? Is Putin the man that we think or supposed to think he is? Don't be so deceived, folks. A lot of people are, and I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon. You see a madman like Bibi Netanyahu or any of his emissaries from Israel denouncing Iran and denouncing the new leader and saying, oh, it's more of the same. Well, it sounds like to average Americans, well, if that's the case, then it must be a good deal. Well, the path to hell and destruction sounds like a good deal, paved with good intentions and good thoughts and good ideas and so forth. But it ain't true. It just ain't true. So people are questioning this whole business right now as we speak. And now we have, as I said about Jerusalem, as I opened the programming, it's very important. It is too important, folks. We have this, maybe this video, I don't know if we're going to play it, but we have Jews who are challenging the rules to claim the heart of Jerusalem. And these are small groups of Jews are increasingly ascending this Temple Mount, as I said to you. Right now, it's small. In Jerusalem's old city, a sacred site controlled for centuries by Muslims, who see the visits as a provocation that could, in fact, undermine these so-called peace talks. Peace, you see, when there is no peace. So, for decades now, the Israelis have been drawn to the site, if you will, where many, a fringe group, particularly of hardcore zealots, now becoming more mainstream Jews, are lining up to enter as a widening group of Israeli politicians, and rabbis are challenging the long-standing rules constraining these Jewish accesses. You see, that's why I brought up the one man in the Arab in the Knesset, the Arab who was opposed to this, who was putting up a lot of protest, because it isn't making the so-called mainstream news here. All we hear about is those dirty Muslims, those bad Muslims in Kenya and Somalia and so forth. We're not hearing about those radical Zionist Jewish zealots, are we? No. So in any event, the Palestinian leaders say that the new activity there has created the worst tension in memory around that landmark, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the Dome of the Rock, and have called upon Muslims to defend the site from incursions, quote unquote. Do you see the conflict here coming, folks? You see what's driving it? All right, we'll come back, folks. May hear from Dr. K in the last part of the show. Rick Adams, Uncensored. we're back, folks. Rick Adams with you tonight, and we are continuing to discuss this whole Middle East equation because it is the key. It is the key to all the prophecies. It is the key to what will happen in this age as the age draws to a close. We see the false and the real attacks on both the topology, the environment, geography, the whole business of excavation and fracking taking place, the creation of storms, the creation of terrible storms. And, we're told now about this shutdown that is going to supposedly take place. The grid, the whole electrical grid, can be shut down at a particular weekend in November or time of the week. And, I'm aware of all of that, and I don't react too strongly because, first of all, we try the best we can to make do with what we have. But, the survival, as you just heard on the sponsors here, that the whole business of protecting yourself, getting off the grid, is paramount if you can. I know a lot of people can't do that. You just can't move off the grid. But many can try, and many can. And I know a fellow who just put a nice, extension on his house. Not the whole house would be done, but certainly the generator that he's put the line right through the house in the country will suffice, because for several years he has had problems in that part of the state with loss of power. And it went on for over 2.5 weeks at one point. And it's not very comfortable. It's not very good. And so you learn from these things. And you try the best you can to have your own energy, your own generation, your own heat in the winter. And, from all of the predictions and all of my, my perceptions, I know across the country, but particularly up here in New England, we could get hit very hard this winter with some tremendous storm activity, including some blizzards. And it could be days, if not a week, before we dig out. So I don't know. I'm not concerned about it because, as I say, you make preparations, you do the best you can, and leave the rest up to him. He's going to take care of the rest, and he'll provide. If he could feed Elijah with a raven, he can do it for you. The main thing is have faith and obey. And instead of listening to politicians and liars and thieves, they're all one and the same anyway, bureaucrats and so forth, like Lindsey Graham and John McCain, listen to him and do what he wants you to do, not what they want you to do. And that's the important point that I have to keep driving home as much as I possibly can. And, some of these listeners that contact me, and I can't answer all your emails. I don't intend to. I try to absorb them, but I can't. Anyway, you understand that most of you who have some axe to grind or maybe a complaint or something, whatever, you may be sincere, but you still are fighting a flesh battle. You're still trying to win a war after the enemy has already conquered your land. They've taken it over. They've laid you to waste. The kitchen is bare, and you're trying to get a few little swords together and a few little bamboos and a few little rods and whatever else you can attach to them, bayonets, and go and fight. Well, it ain't going to work that way. This is a spiritual war of evil against good. And these people who are doing this to us, no, they're not Muslims, are evil. They are diabolical. They will kill anything and anyone in their path. And they don't care if it's a hoax and it's not a real killing or not. They need to create fear. Fear in the hearts of men. And that's what they did in previous world wars. Fear. The fear that the Germans were going to come. The Krauts were coming over the border. They were in Bolivia. They had U-boats. They had everything all over. And, of course, none of it was true. But the media made sure that people believed that perception. And the New York Times, particularly a notorious vestibule of the Rothschild family, notorious, would create lies and send reporters to Russia to lie, like Walter Durante, who went to Russia and aided Joe Stalin in his war against freedom in Russia. sugarcoating the whole communist, butcherous revolution. And they did it again in the war years of the 40s. And they did it again in the 50s in Cuba with Herbert Matthews and his defense of Castro and his reference to him as the Robin Hood of the Sierra Maestres. People, would read this up on their Sunday magazines. Wow, isn't this something? I never knew that Castro was such a nice guy. I never knew that he was really interested in helping people. And all these right-wingers out there and these crazies in the media have been trying to stir up all of this hatred against Castro when all he is a little Robin Hood, taken from the rich and given to the poor. That's what Herbert Matthews said. Must be so. That's what I saw from the mouth of Tom Brokaw or someone similar. And tonight you watch Lion Brian Williams with a straight little face saying it as if it's true. Well, he's reading a script. He's not the editor. He doesn't gather all the script together and read it. He reads it. He reads a teleprompter, and that's what he does. Tom Brokaw used to be caught off guard doing that a lot. And, he'd have that squint, when he came back and he was looking at the wrong camera. Nope. He looked like a buffoon, which is what he was. And, he'd get caught off guard, like many of them do. But too many are polished now, and they're too polished. And, Walter Cronkite did enormous damage in America to the cause of freedom, and deliberately so. He was a United World Federalist, one world government type, who openly said that he believed in one world government. He believed in the philosophies of collectivism, socialism, and so forth. So we shouldn't have been surprised by that, and we weren't. But I remember as a kid, I'd come home from school and there would be Floyd Calver on NBC News, and it was like a 5-minute update, after one of those game shows, the match game or whatever the heck it was. And I'd catch that, and, we'd go back into school and we'd talk about UTHANT and the United Nations and Vietnam, and it was just, percolating, and we'd talk about all of these issues, and we didn't know any better. We had no clue as to what was going on, because the curriculum and the teachers would just teach whatever was spoon-fed them. Now, that was innocuous compared to what they're doing today in the government schools with Common Core, as we talked about, and the ADL pushing their agenda of educationism on the students and the teachers as well, whether they like it or not. So it all comes down, folks, to basic wisdom. And wisdom cannot come from men, cannot come from books or learning in the traditional sense. I believe wisdom comes from above, comes from God. And, a lot of people go, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. Well, what do you got to fear him for? What you fearing God for if he's so good? It's like George Washington tried to say, the fire, like government, is a fearful master. You get too big, it gets out of control, and you get hurt, you get burned. Well, basically the principle is, if you're not pleasing your father, your worldly daddy, and you're doing things to hurt him and disobey him, what do you think he's going to do to you? Well, he's not going to be very happy, that's for sure. But if you obey him, a righteous father, a good father, he's only trying to straighten you out to prepare you for the world. Isn't that the way it is? Now, we don't have fathers today. Oh, we have a couple here and there. But most of the time, they're just, I don't like to use the term whore masters, but let's face it. They're jumping in and out of bed. They're having relationships all over the world. And a child today doesn't know who his father is. In fact, he doesn't even have to have a father. He might have two lesbians as mom and mom. And when that happens, the end is not very far off, my friend. It's not very far off. Because no society, no fabric of society can exist for long like that. It just doesn't happen. I'm sorry, but all of history tells us that the family unit is the social fabric. The nuclear family is the basis of a country and a society, and as the family goes, the country goes. No way around it. That's why it's so fashionable for them in the media, the Jewish media, to keep telling us about those terrible guns in Chicago, those terrible guns all over, when in fact the guns have nothing to do with it. But they do in the media. All right, come back with Rick Adams, Uncensored.
Whatever needs to be done, we gotta do ourselves.
That's for sure. I'd go one step further. One more question.
Are you with us or are you not? I'm not.
That's putting it mildly, folks. I'm not with the trend. I'm not with the crowd. I'm not with the march toward destruction, self-destruction. They're going one way, I'm going the other. And I don't intend to follow them, the Pied Piper over the cliff. And I don't know. Hopefully you don't. Hopefully you can see what I see. And you'll be able to be free from this great deception. This great deception in the end times that will take place, like we're seeing small samples of it now with fake shootings and crisis actors and actresses brought to the scene of an alleged shooting, alleged bombing, an alleged explosion. Well, we know sooner or later they're going to pull a real one. We have those suitcase bombs that the Soviet intelligence, Russian intelligence, KGB, and Mossad certainly have control over. Sooner or later, they can do it. They can pull it. A real one. And that's when they've really culminated the fear factor. To manipulate the stupid politicians and the lawmakers to do whatever they want them to do. Snap their fingers in the media and tell us what we need. Total lockdown, total control. That's what we need, right? To make us safe. Don't buy it. Don't believe it. Let me take a call here from Chris in Las Vegas, I believe. Chris, are you there?
Why, yes, Rick, I am. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
You know, Rick, you were speaking earlier of these salacious cries for peace that come from this group. And it speaks back to the serpent cults with their split tongues, talking out both sides of their mouth with their lies to seduce with faint words of art, to spread their lies to the people disguised as truth. And when they speak to peace, they truly speak in polar opposites and mean more.
Yeah, they do. It's Orwellian. Doublespeak, isn't it?
Rhetoric. One must lie to speak the truth is what is stated as the lie. The law of rhetoric. John Sartre, the hero master of this demonic cult.
Well, that's obvious, isn't it?
Well,
it's pretty obvious, yeah. Are you seeing what I'm just reporting and seeing here with all of these false flags and who's behind it? I'm sure you do, Chris.
Oh, absolutely. Many of us are awake and paying very close attention because we're serving a higher power.
That's
trying to wake up the world with the truth.
No question about that. But would that the masses, you see, be able to see that? And, of course, I understand that. We know, and you and I know, it's not God's wish right now that everybody understand. Otherwise, there'd be no point to this great deception in the end and Satan's attempt at snatching the seed of mercy, would there?
Well, likely not. But the Creator has His own plan in His own time, and He will choose the time for the masses to have the veil of lies pulled from their eyes to let them see the truth of what it truly is, that they've been deceived since the beginnings of time.
Right. We do see through a glass very darkly currently, don't we, as a people?
Oh, it's very, very dark now. The demonic powers are strong on the earth right now because...
Yeah, they are. They are. Yeah, they're coming out in full force. Some people call it the 200 or so gods that are returning to the earth, the demons, that are working through various fronts and activities and people, even demons, to frighten the world into accepting their rule. And I don't doubt that. I don't doubt it at all. I can see it in myself. I see it every day. And people are zombified. People are totally zombies now when I see the way they drive and act and walk and talk. And I see them as drugged. And we know the EMF exists, the electromagnetic fields, and we know about all of the other forms of brainwashing and so forth, and psychotropic drugs, to name a few. But it is just absolutely more apparent now than it has ever been.
These abominous assaults on the people and attempts to murder those who won't kowtow and lick the boots of Satan are just beyond conception for most people, because they can't believe that people are truly dark angels of the dark forces of the demon.
That's right. They can't believe it. They just don't believe, because they themselves are basically good at heart. I mean, they're not, plotting to do evil, people, and the average person. And they don't understand what people do who child sacrifice, how they get away with it, how they do it. They perform these satanic rituals and masses and stuff, and how they kill and murder. And, all of this is beyond their grasp. They're horrified. They don't want to accept it. Only in the movies,
Absolutely. It's just beyond common sense. But I'm here in Salt Lake to attend a law court action where they've stolen 6 children, these demoniacs. And these are especially this cult of the Black Sea who are running these courts. They're stealing these children from good, loving, spirit-favoring families who worship in the light to try to drag them to the dark. And these cults of Satan and their satanic church courts for God-portrayed men to rule over the rights of other men are such a Talmudic disease that perpetuates this country, and the bar star chamber of Satan has taken over the law in this country, and there is no law. There's only church courts.
Very true. Very true. Thank you for your call, my friend. I'm going to move on now, as always. Thank you, Chris. Fred, come on up here, Fred.
Hey, Brother Rick.
Yes, sir.
Great to hear your voice, as always. Speaking of false flag, the K-9 cops from Oklahoma City did a documentary entitled A Noble Lie. And when I heard the interview a couple years ago, they said the purpose of that was to deprogram and enlighten the American people regarding the false flag MO that they believe would be repeatedly utilized to bring the American people to their knees. And since I've been reading The Synagogue of Satan by Andrew Carnegie and Hitchcock, when I read what I call the rabid Zionist hyenas, if you think about that, a rabid hyena Zionist, whichever is most descriptive, that's really what their media is all about, right? I mean, they are just despicably, deplorably disinfo propagandists. But in this book, they talk about they want a world order of their own, prominent rabbis. The Goyim are nothing more than cattle fit for the slaughter. October the 1st, 2000 or 2002, the Italian police break up a snuff film ring that just happens to be comprised of Israeli gangsters.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I had no idea, Rick, what a snuff film industry was until I read this in Hitchcock's The Synagogue of Satan. They kidnap young Goyim kids, they brutally rape, torture, murder them, and they film it. And then they sell it.
Yeah. And they get big bucks for it, too. They sold it for thousands of dollars. A single copy.
$20,000 per copy. So I tell people, hey, you get this book and you can finally set yourself free, or the Holy Spirit will set your soul free from all this sinful propaganda, mind control crap that's been inculcated through the educational fool school system and the 501c3 corporate government business of salvation spiritual propaganda church system. And these idiot pseudo-Christian hypocrite friends of mine say, well, the chosen people, we can't let those dirty Muslims have their way with the chosen people.
I know it.
You got to support them. It's a just war.
I think that's the time to just find some new friends, It's what I've done.
I tell them, it's a just war and you're going to hell because of it.
Yeah, because they're going to judge. They're going to be judged in the churches first, right there in the pulpit more than any place. So that's where the judgment leads. That's where it believes and begins. Thank you, sir. Out of time, Fred. Thank you all for joining us. Rick Adams, Uncensored, here on RBN. Good night.